When I decided that I was going to start a business based on my years of research and understanding of the omnipotent power of natural law, I knew that it would have to be an educational based model because most people have never been exposed to the philosophy of natural law. That's when Living Well B&L LLC, short for Living Well Under Natural Law, was born. But I also knew that the educational part of the business would have to be provided at no cost to anyone, because this information is the kind that has the potential to change the world. So I would never think about putting any of it behind a paywall or force people to spend anything other than their own time to learn any of it. I do, however, welcome voluntary paid subscriptions to my Substack if you do appreciate my work and would like to support my continued efforts to create a superior model for society which restores all power back to the individual. So, my business model is to first educate and secondly to promote products that have helped me to align my life and especially my diet with natural law and show people how they can benefit from them as well. But I don't think anyone should buy anything from any influencer or YouTuber until they truly understand the benefits they will experience. In the case of this video about BodyHealth Perfect Amino, I will get into the science behind why it is so effective and what it claims to do. And if you've seen my short game changer video, I will explain in more detail how this product has helped me to get to 58 years old with essentially the same body I had at 21 over the past 6 years of using this product daily. But in addition to just explaining the product, I also want to get into what proteins and carbohydrates actually do inside the body, because that is what makes this product so effective at what it does. And looking around at the state of health in the general public today, especially in America, where more than 60% or over 205 million people are suffering with one chronic disease or more, it is clear to me that most people are operating on very poor information or knowledge of how their body really works. And that is the very root of the healthcare crisis, as well as what needs to change to truly fix the problem. Okay, so let's get into the science behind Perfect Amino. And we're going to start this video with 3 claims. BodyHealth's claims about Perfect Aminos. Number 1, not all proteins are created equal. Number 2, that we receive 4 calories of gram per protein we consume is a misconception. And number 3, Perfect Amino is a source of pure essential amino acids that is 99% utilized to synthesize new protein in the human body. And we're going to cover all 3 of these in this video here. So let's start with claim number 1. Not all proteins are created equal. So let's take a look at this chart here real quick. Different proteins, once digested and absorbed, provide our bodies with different amounts of usable bioavailable protein gram for gram. So looking at the chart down here, egg protein is actually the most bioavailable protein available in the natural world. So when you consume eggs, 48% of that is actually used to build and repair cells in the body. Then we have meat, fish, and poultry, and then we've got the soy, whey, protein powders, only 18% utilized. And we'll get into what happens with the rest of it later on. Okay, I want to talk real quick about the metabolic pathways that essentially all food takes once it gets consumed and digested by the body. There's 2 essential pathways. There's the anabolic pathway and the catabolic pathway. The anabolic pathway is the pathway in the body that uses the food to build and repair. And the catabolic pathway is the pathway that uses food as energy. Okay? So that's just a basic explanation. You can pause this and read the rest if you want. But taking a look at that first chart again, we can see here how this works. So with whole eggs, just for example again, 48% of the eggs that we consume follow the anabolic pathway and actually build muscle, repair cells, build all the cells in your body. 52% of it is catabolic, which means it's converted to sugars or fats, used as energy or stored. And as we go down the list here, the lower bioavailability of a protein, the more it's actually used or converted into sugar and used as energy. So that's the basic understanding. We're going to get into more detail as we go on here. Claim number 2, that we receive 4 calories per gram of protein we consume, is a misconception. Calories are largely misunderstood by the general public. They are actually a measurement of energy production, or how much energy is produced when a gram of a macronutrient is broken down and burned as fuel to create energy. Carbohydrates are broken down and used for energy immediately. And if there is no need for immediate energy, the remainder are used to make glycogen or body fat. For every gram of carbs we consume, 4 grams of energy is produced. It is purely fuel. And that's going to be important again as we move forward to understand. So what happens to micronutrients in the body? And this is, I really wanted to get into this part in explaining the science behind Perfect Amino, because most people really are never taught what happens once they consume food and it gets into the body and what it actually does. I know people have a general idea of what's happening, but they don't actually know the science or the details behind it. So that's what, it's important to explain that in this video, because that's what really drives home the point of why Perfect Amino is such an effective product and why I will continue to use it for the rest of my life. So we will start with carbohydrates. All carbohydrates eventually convert into glucose in the body. It doesn't matter what kind of carbohydrate it is. Complex, simple, it doesn't matter. It all converts into glucose eventually in the body. Excess glucose is combined into glycogen. And the glycogen is then stored in the muscles and in the liver. When the body is low on glucose, it then goes to the glycogen and breaks it down to form more glucose. And the glucose then goes into the bloodstream and is sent to the cells to power the mitochondria. Now, just a quick note here. When the body needs more glucose, it only gets it from the glycogen in the liver. All glycogen that gets stored in the muscles is eventually used to power the muscles and energy for the muscles only. So no glycogen comes out of the muscles at all to create more glucose. All the glucose comes from what's stored in the liver. Now, what happens when the glycogen stores are full in both the muscles and the liver? If they're full, excess glucose is then combined with fat. And this forms triglycerides. And it's the triglycerides in your body that combine to form all of the subcutaneous and visceral fat that we store in our body. And this is how people continue to put weight on year after year after year, because they're getting too much glucose in their body. But it does have to combine with the fat, with the excess fat in the body too. So you have to understand the role of carbohydrates and proteins and fat when you're creating your perfect human diet. Because as I show in my 4-part optimal health video series that's free on my YouTube channel, the perfect human diet is going to be a little bit different for everybody, because everybody has different tastes, they have different lifestyles, different levels of energy. Everyone's different. So the perfect human diet is going to be a little bit different for everybody. But there are some basic fundamentals that you need to understand to build the perfect human diet for you and your lifestyle. If you're consuming too much fat, if you're consuming too much carbohydrates with that fat, that's what adds the weight onto the body. So you really have to understand all this stuff to understand what makes a perfect human diet. And by diet, I mean the things we consume on a regular basis, not a fad diet or, a label. All right? Diet is what we consume to build and maintain homeostasis, as well as to give us energy to get through our days. Moving on. So, how much glucose does the body need daily? Well, the average sedentary individual uses roughly 5 grams of glucose per hour. Based on level of activity, most people burn 120 to 150 grams of glucose per day. Now that's your average sedentary individual. If you're athletic, if you work out a lot, if you run, if you bike, if you do any type of exercise, your body will burn more. But this is the average for most people. Now the brain uses as much as 120 grams of this daily glucose transformation. However, if your body is keto adapted, that can drop to as little as 30 grams per day being used by the brain. So when anybody out there says that your brain needs glucose to operate efficiently, they don't know what they're talking about. Because in many interviews that I've seen, as well as my own personal experience, when I shifted to a ketogenic diet, people will tell you, the testimonials are just numerous out there of people who have experienced a level of mental clarity that they've never had in their life. Because a brain actually prefers fat as its fuel source. The beta hydroxybutyric acid is the preferred source of fuel for the brain. And people will tell you when they shift to a high-fat diet, their thinking, their clarity becomes so much better. Because glucose is a fast-burning fuel and it's highly oxidative and it eventually causes problems. So the more fat you can get into your diet while restricting carbohydrates and glucose, the better your body will operate. And again, in my future videos, I'm going to be getting into the science behind why that's the case. So subscribe to the channel and you can continue your learning process right here. Via the process of gluconeogenesis, your body can produce up to 150 grams of glucose daily. So, by just eating protein and fat, we don't need any carbohydrates whatsoever in our diet. Because, as you saw, a certain percentage of proteins that are non-bioavailable to build are converted into glucose. So, you can develop your diet based on protein and fat to give your body all the essential nutrition it needs every day without any carbohydrates ever. And how much glucose and glycogen can the body store? Well, this is where all the glucose is found in the body. In the bloodstream, in the liver, and in your muscles. Alright, so in the bloodstream of every human being, there are no more than 4 grams or 1 teaspoon of glucose present at any given time. So, what do you think is happening to all these people that are guzzling 3 cans of Coke a day, which is essentially 90 grams of glucose or 30 teaspoons? Where do you think it's going? If your body only needs 4 grams in the bloodstream present at any given time to fuel the mitochondria. Well, it's getting stored in the liver or the muscles, right? The liver can only store 100 to 120 grams of glycogen at any given time. And the muscles can only store 400 to 900 grams of glycogen depending on the muscle mass of an individual. So, if you have a diet which gives you more glucose than your body can handle, that is the start of chronic disease. It's the start of inflammation. It's the start of oxidative stress, and eventually leads to chronic diseases. And it's all based on the diet. So again, we have to learn and listen to our bodies to understand what we're putting in, what it's doing, what's being stored, what's being used, and again, find that perfect state of homeostasis for you and your lifestyle. Okay? Now again, the glycogen in the muscles is used solely to power the muscles. And so all the excess glucose that the body needs as it's used by the mitochondria comes from the liver. But once the liver gets to 120 grams, it shuts down. No more can come in here. And so your insulin tries to force it into the cells. And then the cells say, I'm full too. And this is where we start getting insulin resistance. And that's what starts throwing off the hormone balance of the body, is because you're flooding your body with too much glucose. Simple as that. All right, moving on. Proteins and fats, however, are very different types of macronutrients. And the only two macronutrients which are among the essential nutrients we require for survival, because they are building blocks as well. Essential fatty acids, or EFAs, and the 9 essential amino acids, or EAAs, found in Perfect Amino are among the 45 essential nutrients the body needs every day to maintain optimal health. Now that 45 number can go as high as 95 depending on what you're looking at, and the other 50 are basically all micro minerals. And I'll show you in another video how I get all of those, the full 95. But in my Optimal Health video series, I focus on the 45 essential nutrients, but there are an additional 50 essential minerals that your body requires in very tiny amounts, but they're all part of maintaining homeostasis. So there are no exogenous carbohydrate macronutrients at all that are essential for human survival. Only proteins and fats are essential. Okay? So let's get into what proteins do when they get into the body, when we consume them. So all proteins, and this is a protein molecule, are made up of molecules specific to that particular type of protein. All proteins are then broken down in your stomach into protein peptide chains from the interaction with enzymes and stomach acid. All proteins are then passed into your small intestines, where new enzymes are released, and these protein peptide chains are finally broken of their peptide bonds, and individual free-form amino acids are released to make any of the 20,000 protein molecules needed by the body to maintain homeostasis. All proteins, once broken down into their constituent amino acids, are then absorbed through the walls of the small intestines, pass through the liver, and then released into the bloodstream, where they can be absorbed by the individual cells of the body and synthesized into the exact type of protein needed for those cells. And every cell in the body has very exact needs. So that's the process of what happens every time we consume proteins. Now, understanding the role of protein synthesis and amino acids. So there are two basic types of amino acids, essential and non-essential. Non-essential amino acids are made up from the essential amino acids we get from our diet. Both of these types are required to make all the protein your body needs to function correctly. Now, without the correct proportion of all essential amino acids, your body cannot make the proteins required for optimal health. This is the key to understanding the effectiveness of Perfect Amino. Now, if your body doesn't have the right ratio and amount of essential amino acids, the correct amount of required proteins cannot be created. And scientists have known this since the mid-20th century. The biological value of the dietary proteins depends on its constituent amino acids, and show that if the 8 essential amino acids are not available simultaneously at the time of protein synthesis, the intracellular deficit, even though only of one amino acid, would limit the protein synthesis of the body. And this is from 1946. It doesn't just need each of the essential amino acids, it needs each in an exact ratio of one to another. And this ratio is something scientists have been investigating for decades. Normal growth and maintenance of the health of humans requires all amino acids, IDAA, conditionally IDAA, and dispensable amino acids to be provided in appropriate quantity and form that is biologically utilizable. This aspect, commonly referred to as availability or bioavailability, is very important to know because food proteins vary greatly in both the concentration and bioavailability of the IDAA and conditionally IDAA. Okay, so again, this is something they've been studying for years, and they know what proteins do in the body, what they break down into, and what is needed to build. And that's where we get the science behind Perfect Amino. Now, if your body receives all the amino acids but is low on certain of them, then it won't be able to use each of the others fully. It's like a team. They have to work together. This is known as the limiting amino acid. If all but one essential amino acid are present and in the correct ratio to make 10 grams of new protein, but the quantity of one of them is only enough to make 3 grams of new protein along with the others, then no matter how many of the other essential amino acids you have, you can only make 3 grams of protein. And that's why we get that chart from earlier. That's how we understand this. All these down here are created by limiting amino acids. The limiting amino acids are converted into sugars or fat in the body. So what happens to these limiting amino acids left over? Proteins are not stored for later use, so excess proteins must be converted into glucose or triglycerides and used to supply energy or build energy reserves. Energy reserves are glycogen and fat. And if you want to look at the anabolic functions, you can still pause this. I don't want to read through it all because I'm trying to keep this short. But these are the anabolic and catabolic functions of protein in the body. Now, there are 2 primary pathways for limiting amino acids to create energy in the body. There are certain amino acids that go into the gluconeogenic pathway, and there are certain amino acids that go into the ketogenic amino pathway. And so this is where we get the glucose creation and the ketone creation. It's all coming from the non-bioavailable amino acids that your body can't use because they're not in the correct ratio. Again, I'm explaining all of this to show you why Perfect Amino is so effective. Now, for most common proteins, and they've known this since 1915, so 110 years, for most common proteins, 50 to 80 grams of glucose can be derived from 100 grams of ingested protein. So again, if you get 200 grams of protein every day, you're getting all the glucose your body needs. You do not need to consume carbohydrates. And they even reinforced this in 2005 in the U.S. Food and Nutrition Board's textbook, Dietary Reference Intakes. They stated that the lower limit of dietary carbohydrate compatible with life apparently is 0, provided that adequate amounts of protein and fat are consumed. So again, it's not just me saying it, this is the science. They know that carbohydrates are not required to maintain homeostasis. But the food pyramid, the base of the food pyramid is almost all carbohydrates. So someone's lying to you. And as always, it's usually the government. Let's see here. So going back to claim 2, let's talk about this idea of calories in, calories out. And the idea that we receive 4 calories per gram of protein is a misconception. Because both fats and proteins are the vital building blocks for every single part of our body's internal infrastructure, such as all cells and hormones, it is only what is left over from this conversion process that is used for energy. Thus, only what remains that is not needed for building or repair is converted into energy, or stored as glycogen or body fat, and why we get the confusion about calories when it comes to these macros. Both proteins and fats are required in the creation and maintenance of all cells in our body. So when it says you're getting 4 calories per gram of protein on a nutrition label, no, it all depends on the quality or the bioavailability of that protein, because you're not actually getting 4 calories. You're getting anywhere from 3 to 1.5 calories per gram of protein, because much of that is used to build while the remainder is used for energy. So that's where we get the confusion in calories. And this is why the idea of counting calories to maintain weight and health is deceiving, because a portion of the calories from proteins and fats listed on a nutrition facts label for every food we consume are used in the creation and repair of cells and hormones. We are not actually getting the full amount of calories we believe we are. What matters most is the quality of the food we're ingesting over the quantity. The higher the quality, the less our bodies require to maintain homeostasis and create the energy we need. So everybody out there consuming a standard American diet and flooding their body with nutrient deficient foods, what you're doing is you're triggering the hormonal leptin and ghrelin cycle over and over again. Because every time we consume nutrient deficient foods, that ghrelin hormone kicks in and sends signals to your brain, I didn't get the nutrients I needed in that last meal, and that triggers leptin to send signals to your stomach, the hunger signals to say, eat more, I need more food. And so the more nutrient deficient your food is, the more you're going to eat, because that's the vicious cycle that your body's going through. So the higher quality of food you eat, the more nutrient dense, the more you're going to shut down that cycle. And that's why, I'm going to be showing a lot of these interviews moving forward in my video series here. But the people who convert to a ketogenic or a carnivore high-fat diet, they all have testimonies that they're never hungry anymore because their bodies are getting the essential nutrients that they need. Once they transition from a standard American diet, once they transition from a high-carb diet onto the proper human diet, this leptin ghrelin cycle shuts down and they're no longer hungry and they eat once or twice a day. So this is all part of it, but I really just wanted to give you an understanding of what's going on with the food that you're eating to show you why Perfect Amino is a source of pure essential amino acids that is 99% utilized to synthesize new protein in the human body. And I use this product so that I can cut back on the non-bioavailable protein in my diet and give my body the anabolic amino acids that it wants to build and maintain without creating the excess fat and energy that it doesn't need. That's why this is such a great product. So, looking again at the protein cycle here from earlier, this is what all proteins go through. And this process takes anywhere from, depending on the protein source, 1 to 20 hours. My dog is chewing on a bone behind me. So as we can see here, raw eggs are only absorbed at a rate of 1 gram of protein per hour. So it takes one raw egg 20 hours to be fully absorbed. And whey protein isolate gets absorbed at 20 grams per hour, or one hour per serving, approximate serving. So knowing this, we go back to the graphic. From the time you consume your protein to the time it gets utilized by the cell to build and repair is anywhere from 1 to 20 hours. And your body's going through a lot of processes, using a lot of energy to create that, to break it down, the whole 9 yards. That creates oxidative stress. And, again, but this is the process we all take. When you consume perfect aminos, this is the process. Goes into your stomach, your intestines, your liver, your bloodstream, to cells in 23 minutes. 99% anabolic and 0 waste. That's why this product is so effective, because within 23 minutes of consuming it, it's doing the job that it takes up to 20 hours for all the rest of your food to do. And it does it without the additional stress on the body. So when people talk about biohacking, this is a true biohack. This product is a true biohack because it's bypassing all the processes and giving your body what it needs to build, because it's 99% anabolic and there's 0 waste. So once I found this out and I read the book from Dr. Minkoff, The Search for the Perfect Protein, it all came so crystal clear to me and what I'd been doing wrong in my diet up until that time, which is over consuming right here all the whey proteins that were converting into fat in my body and being stored in my gut as visceral fat. And everybody stores fat in different places in their body. I don't really store subcutaneous fat. My fat is stored in my gut, as I showed you in my Game Changer video. Everybody stores fat in different places in the body based on your biological makeup. So by adding Perfect Amino to my diet, I was able to cut back on the stuff that was converting into glucose and being stored as fat. And now at 58, I have found my perfect diet. I found the perfect path to homeostasis, and I feel better than I ever have in my entire life. So how do we know the effectiveness of Perfect Amino? The key elements of an amino acid are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Now when an amino acid is deaminated, nitrogen is released and measurable through urine. So this is how they test. Backed by multiple studies, both singularly and comparing Perfect Amino, whey, and whole hen eggs in triple-blind crossover studies where the urine of each participant was collected, the nitrogen quantities measured, we know the precise ratio of essential amino acids the body requires to synthesize new protein with near zero excess. And in the case of Perfect Aminos, 0.04 calories per serving is created of 5 grams of Perfect Amino, meaning that 99% of it is being used in the anabolic pathway to repair and build muscle. So that's why I use this product. I'm so glad I discovered it back in 2020. I've been using it for 6 years, and I will continue to use it for the rest of my life. And quite honestly, I know that this is a product that every single person in this world can benefit from because it adds to building their perfect human diet, which again, I cover in my 4-part Optimal Health video series, which you can watch for free. I'll link it below. So going back to the claims that we started this video with, we've covered them all. Not all proteins are created equal. We receive a different amount of calories per gram of protein depending on the type of protein we consume. And Perfect Amino is a source of pure essential amino acids that is 99% utilized to synthesize new protein in the human body. Hopefully you've learned all that you need to learn to understand why this product can help you in designing your perfect human diet. And if you want to try this product, please use the link below. That way I get a commission on the sale, and it helps to continue funding me to create more videos like this. If you use the discount code NEW20, you will save 20% on your first order. And back when I first started using Perfect Amino, they would have their 15 to 35% off sales every holiday. So I would just wait and stock up, when I was running out for a new holiday sale. But they no longer have to do that anymore, because once they get a customer, they keep a customer. That's how good this product is. So my recommendation to you, this is the best discount you're ever going to get on any of their products. So use it and stock up on your first order, because that 20% is a huge savings. They do have an excellent rewards program where future orders will essentially equate to 10% off on future orders. The only other way to get a discount is to sign up for Subscribe and Save, but when you do that, I get cut out of the loop. I make no more commissions, and you're only getting 15%. So again, stock up, use this new 20 discount code to your benefit, and it's a win-win situation for everybody. Thank you very much for making it through this video, and I hope you've learned a lot about not only what this product can do, but what carbohydrates and proteins are doing when they get into the body, because I think that's, again, one of the sources of the healthcare crisis in the world, is that people just don't understand what's happening to the food once they consume it in their body. So once you understand, you can better create a diet that is optimal for your lifestyle. Thank you very much. I love you all. And yeah, click the order below. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.